Hi, I'm April Pride, founder of SetSet and host of SetSet Show, where we dive into the world of psychedelics for women, mostly. Today's episode is part 2 of my interview with Clare Sausen, the writer behind High Design, a Substack where she explores the intersection of cannabis and the cool products that enhance our experiences with the plant. If you haven't listened to part 1, I encourage you to go back and do so. In this episode, part 2, we get into specific products, including cannabis high tech. If you're starting to think about holiday gifts, SetSet has you covered. For the stoners and psychonauts on your list, SetSet's Psychedelic Cards, a card game to enhance connection and exploration during altered states. If you're watching this on SetSet's YouTube channel, scan the QR code on your screen to learn more about these cards. And special for our listeners, go to getsetset.com, that's GETSETSET.com, and get 1 deck of cards for free when you purchase 2 decks. Enter the number 3, FOR, the number 2 at checkout. That's 3, FOR, 2 at getsetset.com. If you're passionate about design and cannabis and psychedelics, or simply curious about how these worlds collide, keep listening as we explore High Design Part 2 with Clare Sausen.
So technology, I saw that your post on, or your Substack on Cyber Monday. Well, I guess
Yeah.
it was Cyber Monday because you were talking about Black Friday too, but Cyber Monday on weed gadgets. So I want to talk, so you talked about e-rigs. There is so much now. There's high tech, right? Or is there anything new since you wrote that post? It was only a couple of months ago, but yeah, anything that like top 3 high tech gadgets that are going to not break. Unfortunately, when people send me things and they're amazing, and then at some point they don't work.
Totally. I think that the tech has been, people are investing in the actual technology of things a lot more as they're seeing that people are willing to pay more for things too. Like I remember when the volcano was the big weed tech item that I don't want. I still think it's cool. It's evolved from there. I think something that's going to be a lot bigger that I've been looking at recently are dryer vapes. I've tried a bunch and it really all comes down to convenience, smoothness, and portability in terms of not having to stir the bowl too much. There's a lot of tiny things you don't necessarily think about before you're actually somewhere with it. You're like, oh, see, now this like actually smells really bad. Like then you have to think about all those little elements of it. So I think that those are something that I'm really interested in and been looking at a lot. And especially in terms of portable concentrate vaporizers, like PAX has a little adapter that has concentrate pods that you can do. I think that it works really well. When, like I said, I'm not a huge dabber. So I know that there's like Puffco and all of that kind of stuff, which people tend to love. But there's also, the hookah is this weed hookah that I tried when I I was writing a story on Grasslands at Outside Lands in San Francisco, their music festival. There's this whole big weed installation that's called Grasslands. They call it the weed hookah and it's all digital, very Apple product looking, black and white, like pods based on either be relaxed, be happy, that kind of effect-based branding. And then they also had, for people that were a little more into it, like strain-based branding, or I think they'd been experimenting with different things with their pods. But I tried it and it was really smooth and is a really fun, like, party piece or just like house item to have where you can pass around a little hose like a hookah and everybody's sniffing the same thing. It's not a rush to pass it around or it doesn't smell too bad. And it's a very user-friendly way to get into cannabis. But at the same time, it can turn a lot of people off the weed tech of it all who are really homegrown and are passionate about flower and nature and all of that, those elements that are so key to cannabis. But I honestly do embrace both sides of it as long as there's not tons of active harm being done, which I'm sure there can be if you get into terms of technical mining and all of that kind of stuff. But I do think that it's cool to make it more accessible, to make it more, frankly, healthy and easier on your lungs. And that opens it up to a much broader market, a much older market and people that count themselves out of smoking weed as like completely not for them. I found that's a cool cannabis marketing strategy that works really well of just engaging people and really being able to talk to them about stuff. And questions come up when you're doing something more than when you're thinking about it.
Smoking and sharing a joint, a pre-roll
Mhm.
is a great way to socialize.
I did. Yeah.
Hookah?
Hookah.
Share
Yeah.
the hookah, okay.
I did.
And did it feel like it could take the place of, like, that we can socialize and share weed together?
I think that it had that vibe to it, especially how they set it up in the marketing space, the experimentation space where you could try it out. There was very low tables, 4 pillows, like
Mhm.
one in the center where, they were
Yeah.
smoking the like sesh circle thing. And then there was also a few lined up where you could try different kinds or that sort of thing. But yeah, I think that despite the change in what it looks like, I think that you can really still have that community-based feeling in cannabis and in smoking and sharing with technology, especially with like handheld vapes where it's very user-friendly and you're just like, okay, just suck in. And same with this kind of thing. Don't really have to do much. Maybe you have to press a button while you suck in, but it's
Right.
a lot less than pull out the bowl and like, trying to teach people how to do
Right.
it in a very manual way.
How
Same
did
with,
it
edibles has opened up that market in a big way. But since edibles come on differently at different people at different times, it's a little less of a natural parallel.
Yeah, that immediate did it hit you? How does the hookah compare to the volcano in terms of the effect, the high?
I think that it's a little smoother for me, the hookah, because it has water-based filtration, which I always really love. There's something about the bubbling that I always enjoy.
I don't like the turkey base.
Actually, not that long ago, I went to an event where there was one, and it is like fun. There's something cool about it, and you still can. It has that sharing element to it too. Not everybody's going to share a bag. I certainly would. And it's fun to have something where you don't have to keep relighting it. And it is nice to have something a little easier. And especially where people are using it in a more like party or social sense, where it's an alcohol replacement in that sense, making it more easily integrated where it is as easy as like picking up a can and drinking it, I think is important to keep weed integrated into the space where it'll have longevity and where it appeals to a much larger crowd besides the niche that's very into weed and loves the ritual of it.
Yeah.
Doesn't always translate to everyone.
Shit.
Should work.
Oh, that there are these mouthpieces, these custom, like, crazy you were talking about lighter surrounds, lighter holders. You can do these
Yeah.
with the volcano mouthpieces.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think that's a cool part of advancement, not only technological, just also like creative advancement and artistic advancement and seeing cannabis pieces as art or respecting it more as a craft or as a business and seeing a lot of businesses succeed that are focusing on creating beautiful wares or any sort of upgrade to the experience that you already have. You get more respect and you're starting to learn that it is an experience that you can see in a lot of different ways.
Where's the white space? Where do you see there being opportunity for the accessories market or just design related to cannabis in general?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I said, I think that the whole concentrate market is starting to become a lot more user friendly. I think that's something that has been probably one of the most typically broy spaces and hardest spaces to break in is like when you think of dabbing. A lot of people, even if you're someone like me who's very into weed, I haven't dabbed a lot. I've only had a couple experiences and they were mostly in college with guy friends. Like it just wasn't as normalized or integrated into a female space than I was
Yeah.
comfortable doing on my own. I think bowls came first and pipes, and you saw a lot of novelty pipes that was part of what inspired me to start writing about it. I'm a big fan of Edie Parker. For
Mhm.
instance, they put out so many cool, interesting novelty pieces. But I started thinking about how can you bring form and function together in a way that is really appealing and is something you actually want to use every day. It doesn't gross you out to use. But once you start to see the beauty in novelty things, you start to think about how would it actually work? What does it really smoke like? So I try to talk about stuff like that as well. Like, for example, something that has a really wide inner basin where you're smoking, it's going to fill up with a lot of smoke. And it's going to be a really harsh hit. There's some things that I think are more suited for decor than for everyday use. And that's cool to see too, that the market's expanding wide enough to include that. I think that there's space for more creative advancement and more user-friendly accessibility. I think it also comes with broader cultural destigmatization and people being more interested. That gets more ideas in more heads in the game thinking about things like that. But yeah, I would like to see something like bongs and rigs become more normalized and not such a whoa, like, okay, then like
I
that
guess you
something
really
like
are serious about your weed.
right. Where it's like it is funny where the rig really does use a lot less weed than something like a joint, which is super normalized. And I think just because it's intuitive and we all know how to do it, that it's an easy first step into it for a lot of people. Me personally, I don't love joints. I just feel like my mouth feels weird after a while, honestly. And I don't always love the taste and that sort of thing. And that's something too where I have seen advancements outside of the accessories market in weed itself. A lot of people starting to look to other botanicals that work well with cannabis and talking about terpenes and entourage effects and really getting into dissecting cannabinoids in a way that doesn't feel crazy scientific. This is what CBG is. I think that people will have a lot more positive experience with cannabis generally by knowing themselves and by understanding the plants a lot more and the different kinds of forms of delivery and how that works for them. It's really easy to have a bad experience with weed early on because it is pretty accessible for a lot of people from like high school age on. So it's easy to have a bad experience with it that turns you off entirely. I get a lot of people with hesitation to go back into the world of it, but I think that's something that people in the market are thinking about a lot and thinking about where are those gaps for people that are interested in entering the cannabis market, but are still very unsure because you ask bud tenders what their experiences are like, and they tell a lot of the same stories where they're recommending a lot of the same products. They're just one of the best people to talk to understand where people are really at. And I live in California, so I have a very different perspective of it than my mom lives in Tennessee, and she has a really different experience for her over there. It's a lot superior experience, and she's older and understands where the country has been in terms of legality and the way people see, especially women, especially mothers. It's hard to get over that barrier. I think as younger generations grow up and more older generations are starting to understand younger generations and knowledge sharing happens when you're willing to let it. I think that there's a lot of different angles that people can start coming into weed with, whether it be concentrate pens are a really easy way to get into it and dose small. A lot of people love edibles. There's a ton of different delivery for edibles now too that are all across the board from sublingual to digesting to drinks. So I think just like advancement in general and more people coming together to have interesting ideas is where we're going in terms of opening up the market to more people.
So you're not into joints and you're not into edibles. You talked about dryer vaping and
I'm mostly, yes, I'm pretty much not exclusively, but I like flower the best personally. And like I said, I think there's a lot of room for me to explore still in dabbing. I'm still like a little dab shy. Definitely not counting it out. But personally, I like flower the best. And I've always liked bongs the best. I've
Mhm.
always just liked the ceremony and the ritual of it. I think one of my favorite parts is putting everything together and sitting down and having a sparkling water and like having
Yeah.
everything come together in that way. I like pipes too. I think it's just a drier and less smooth. Like I think a bong is usually the smoothest experience you can have with flower. And then I typically say that a drier vape is the like healthiest way that you can
Yeah.
smoke flower.
Yeah, for sure. It is. And flower is by far my
Yeah,
favorite.
I agree.
Yeah. They're curious, they're looking, right? So what's the most low tech way for them to say yes? And the rise of the disposable vape pen, it is
Totally.
such a big product category, but I understand why it's such an easy yes, right? For bud tenders to say, hey, maybe if you've never done it before, might want to try this. And you don't have to buy a battery, you don't have to charge. It's just yes.
I think it does have the lowest barrier to entry in that way. And I was talking to a couple of relatives over the holidays that pull me aside as the weed guru to ask me questions. It hushed tones away from everyone else. Someone was telling me that they had been into disposable vapes, and is there a better way for that, or how do you get into making it not a disposable habit? And obviously just buying a battery and buying 510 thread vape
Parts.
pods it's
Yeah.
always been the easiest way for me to go with it. I don't smoke them a ton, but I do have one around for various travel things or discretion purposes. So I have always recommend people go that route. There's a brand called O.Pen that I like to use personally. That's just an easy screw-on experience where you draw to start it and there's no buttons or anything. I think that introducing people, first you have to get them past the barrier of weed, and then you have to start talking to them about there's a lot in weed now and also sustainability. And then you start going into the
Yeah.
multidisciplinary aspects of it, culturally, technologically.
Mhm.
It is a very storied plant. Exactly.
Let's talk about those buttons for a second, though. The buttons are
Sure.
so funny to me. Okay, so if you're listening and you can't figure out why your pen, well, you usually need to hit the button 5 times very fast or 6 times very fast. Sometimes it's 3.
Right.
But I would start with 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the light
Yeah.
changes, it's on, it works.
Turn it off. I personally
Okay.
never turn it off. I don't go through them super quickly, but I go through them sometimes where I'm like, maybe I should be turning them off. I
Yeah,
think that
that's what I was
it's
asking.
nice for if you're traveling or it's in your pocket or your purse or something and you want to make sure it doesn't turn on.
Yeah.
I haven't really ever had a problem with that personally, but if you're paranoid about it, do
Totally.
that. But I find it to be too much of a pain in the ass to turn it on and off to really do it.
What's one question that you
Get a lot from people. What is the difference in terms of THC and CBD and ratios and that kind of thing? You go into a dispensary,
Mhm.
they ask you what you want. Maybe you have the general category, but then you get there and what do you do? There's 1,000 brands easily
Yeah.
in the weed market that is so hard to distinguish between. I think that a lot of people have questions about, like effects-based things. A lot of people ask me about how to find a strain that doesn't make you anxious or find a strain that doesn't make you tired or that kind of thing. And I have always been less strain based. I did used to do strain reviews and that kind of thing for different work in the past, but it's just always really hard for me to keep up, honestly. So now what I personally look for is usually I prefer outdoor grown for sustainability purposes and also just I like the philosophy behind it. And I just feel I don't know, more spiritually connected to it when I'm using it.
Shout out Astor Farms.
I'm very privileged to live in a place where I can get really good weed that's grown locally. So that's always cool to look for. I like to buy in a little bit more bulk than like an eighth, where a lot of the best weed is sold in small amounts. But once I find a brand that I like, I start looking at their strains and stuff. And something that I do love on weed packaging is explaining terpenes a little bit, or even just listing them is great for me because I've gotten to a place where I know them, but a lot of people don't. And I think that can be something that really changes your experience with weed. It took me a long time to start to understand what weed actually smelled when I was like, or what I was smelling for. And a lot of dispensaries, they'll give you a little jar to smell from, and you're like, all right, it's weed, all right. But it really is just what smells better to you and what feels more right. And for me, that's always been like piney and gassy things.
Mhm.
And then I looked into it and reverse engineered it that way with terpenes. Oh, okay, those are effects that I like. I'm more of a sativa person. I like more like focused and energetic highs than I don't really have sleep problems same way, which is great. But really going for what feels to you and just weirdly trusting your intuition for no reason, even if it's like marketing or strain name or whatever, you have to start somewhere
Yeah.
and then just exploring from there and trial and error.
Yeah, I live in Washington State and you can't smell the weed here. That's not
Right.
an option, right? So in a lot of places, there's no open container that you can connect with the weed, the cannabis
Right.
before.
Yeah. And that's why I say it's cool on packaging when they list terpenes, but you do have to do your own research in that capacity. A lot of people have
Yeah.
started to list effects and have made their strain names more effects based. The first question is just what are you looking for and why are you smoking and
Mhm.
how do you want to feel? And then it's pretty easy from there to figure out where you're going.
The last I checked, Connecticut was the only state that required that you put terpenes on the
Hmm.
label. Yeah, go Connecticut.
Yeah.
I want to wrap up here. Thank you so much for sharing your time. If you could share with
Yeah,
our
of course.
listeners how they can find you and subscribe to your Substack.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me again. I've been a fan of your work and I'm really
Oh,
excited
thanks.
to be able to connect. Yeah, so you can find me at Clare Sausen on Instagram. My Substack is at High Design Online. The Substack itself is just called High Design. You can find it Substack because I have it linked anywhere that you can find me. That's at Pottery Shop on Instagram, which is POTRY shop. It's usually
Great.
very limited stock and just when I feel like making them, but always a fun thing to do on
Oh,
the side and
great.
stay in the weed world and
For
do
sure.
anything I can with this stuff that I love.
Nice. Great. Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad to know where to get your products that you're making, right? Thank you. Really, Claire. I am so happy to know you. I think someone
Yeah.
shared it with me, or I saw it on Lauren Yoshiko, maybe when she was writing for Broccoli. Yeah. And
Awesome.
it's like, oh my gosh, great. I love that. This is exactly up my alley.
I'm building it as it goes and very much trying to see what I can do with it, if anything, but it's just something that I want to do anyway. Hopefully, the effects come out the way you want it to, but you just focus on enjoying it and taking it seriously as your job, then
Yeah.
hopefully things fall into place that way. And obviously, I've been doing a lot of other things to sustain myself, but I always try to keep within the realm of things that I really enjoy doing and really want to spend my time with. However, can't always do something you love when you work, but if you're doing it for something that you love and something you care about, it gets me through because there have been times when I worked really dead end things where I just had no interest in the mission or what I was doing. And it just felt like an email job or like a PowerPoint job. It's easy to get lost in that, but there's a lot of boxes we put ourselves into, but just trusting it and doing it and enjoying it. Like, can't turn out too wrong. Worst case is you
Mm,
stop doing it.
totally.
Good.
I appreciate that. I'm going to connect you with Rachel. She's super cool. And she just has friends in LA, but she just moved there last year. So you guys are in a similar
Okay.
place. It's easy to meet people in LA because everyone's new. Yeah.
Especially
Um,
like having this industry has been such a huge people are so nice and collaborative for the most part. It doesn't
yeah,
matter who you are, where, but if somebody's interested in whatever, it's easy to make a connection and it's just a
totally.
happy little circle for the most part of people in the community.
Yeah, I think you're right. You guys will find each other. And I'm realizing like I have a deck of cards, an integration deck of cards that you play while you're on psilocybin. I have a friend that uses it for MDMA therapy.
Oh
But I'm gonna
yeah.
send it to you because if
Okay. Yeah.
that's high design.
That's really cool. I saw that on Instagram.
Yeah, broccoli. I was in a shop here in Seattle.
What have you been working on lately?
So behind the scene, I've got oflikeminds.co.
I saw that.
Psilocybin online. Really, you sell it's PDF downloads, and then we gift you the psilocybin. And so,
Cool.
our product that I'm the most excited about from that is we have extracted psilocybin concentrated capsules. In the next 60 days, I'm pulling it off the website, and I'm not going to have the product on the website anymore.
Okay.
We'll just have it like if you know me, you can reach out to me. The product is a museum dose, which is 3/4 of a gram of psilocybin. That has inspired
That's funny.
museum dose. It is not my original thought, but for some reason, I'm the only one that ever uses it.
This is good.
It works. We're starting events in Seattle with two different types of events. We're going to have card night once a month. I've partnered with The Stranger, which is an alternative weekly here. They have a ticketing platform. And the guy that
Cool.
started The Stranger as a person who's a writer, he was one of the founders of The Onion. He and I partnered, and he's going to write 5 things to do on a museum dose this month in Seattle. The Stranger community's got 160,000 followers. They vote. And on the third Saturday of every month, we vote which one we're going to meet up and do live in person. And then
Oh,
you buy a
fun.
ticket and you get a museum dose there under we're Decrim City. So I can gift it there.
That's
And
awesome.
and then game night, same thing. You buy a ticket to come to game night, and then I gift you the product there. But people are I've piloted a lot of things like meeting up at parks on Saturday morning. People really want the in person. It's not as easy or convenient or as scalable as people like to say, but it's going to go somewhere. And I'm just going
Yeah.
to following that. So we're just gearing up for a lot of events.
That's awesome. It's pretty much everybody's like gearing up for it to be as prevalent as cannabis is. And
Yeah.
I think that keeping that homegrown element in psilocybin especially, it's so important, obviously, as you know, like the set and setting, everything is so important in meeting people in community in real life is just so key to it not being crazy corporatized, weirdly misinterpreted.
That is where, yeah, the legality around like having drugs online is one thing, but I'm just shipping stuff off to people. I'm never ever talking to them.
Yeah.
I'm not meeting them. And for my own like mental health, I think it's a really good idea for me to be out in the world more. I really
Yeah.
thrive in that role. People are really,
Right.
people are awesome. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be a fun year.
I've been going to a lot of weed events the last year, and I had a column for a little bit writing about weed events in the area.
Mm.
So it's been cool to see everybody's different angles on it, but there's so much room for a feminine perspective, most of all, but also just small scale, homegrown events that don't feel super brandy and super flashy. And it can definitely be like very party side of weed, where I think that's great, but there's a real craving for people making friends and just having
Connection.
fun
Yes.
and going out for a night and actually enjoying yourself and then coming back and feeling good about it.
Thank you for joining us for today's show. I'm April, and I'll be back the next installment of SetSet Show, where we cover everything you need to have a safe, supported psychedelic experience in the wild. If you're starting to think about holiday gifts, SetSet has you covered. For the stoners and psychonauts on your list, SetSet's Psychedelic Cards, a card game to enhance connection and exploration during altered states. Go to getsetset.com, that's GETSETSET.com, and get one deck of cards for free when you purchase 2 decks. Enter the number 3, FOR, the number 2 at checkout. That's 3, FOR, 2 at getsetset.com.